This is the Nystagmus Network Virtual Open Day 2020. This presentation is called What Seems to Be the Trouble. It's an interview with Claire Entwistle. So I'm delighted to introduce Claire today. Claire's a researcher, a writer and a body psychotherapist. We'll get to know exactly what that is later on. Claire's also a long-standing member of the Nystagmus Network, previously served as a trustee and was the charity's first ever salaried member of staff. But today we're here to talk about Claire's new book, which is called What Seems to Be the Trouble. So Claire, hello, it's lovely to have you with us today.
Hi Sue, great to see you.
So can you start by telling us a little bit about your book, please?
Yeah, sure. Well, I wrote this really as an explanation and a discussion and exploration of what it's like, not just to have nystagmus, but what it's like to have a little understood health condition of any kind. In my case, I've got nystagmus with some kind of neurological problem, which is undefined, but one doctor called it a tiny bit of brain damage, he said, probably somewhere around the where the ears and the eyes are connected in the brain. And as well as having some difficulties with seeing things, I get a lot of dizziness, nausea, travel sickness, and I'm probably because I've got quite a head posture when I'm not looking at the screen and trying to line my head up. Over the years, I'm developing more and more musculoskeletal problems, mostly around my neck, which is very easily damaged, but also in the rest of my body. So the effects of this tiny bit of brain damage, this relatively minor eye condition, because I can see well enough to walk around and everything perfectly well and read and all that, the effects of that have had quite a big effect on my life. And I wrote the book, as I said, partly for people with nystagmus, because it's really good to share one's experience, but also for other people who've, I've had responses from people who've had things as disparate as irritable bowel syndrome, autoimmune diseases, juvenile arthritis, all kinds of things which have a big effect on somebody's life without really counting as a very debilitating illness or health condition in themselves. So that was a big part of it.
Okay, and you've explored both conventional and alternative medicine, I think.
Indeed, and that's a big subject in the book. Something that people like me, and probably quite a lot of us listening, suffer from is a difficulty with explaining to doctors what's going on for them, and a great difficulty in getting anything back that actually helps them. You know, the things which are offered may not necessarily help. And some of us, me included, not all of us, are very prone to side effects of medicines and reactions to treatments and so on. And I think that can make quite a gulf between us and people whose experience of medicine is really good. And there are people who just keep getting things treated. And in my book, I have an imaginary character called Rodney.
Yes.
Who personifies this, and I might just read a little bit, if that's okay.
Oh, yes, please do.
Rodney is someone whose experience of conventional medicine is uniformly positive. His broken leg was set in hospital and treated by a lovely physiotherapist called Louise until he regained his former brisk walk. His mother had breast cancer 10 years ago, but she's out of danger now, thanks to the treatment. He's thankful that his sons are immunised against the child killers of not so long ago, and all for free. He loves the NHS, does Rodney, and won't hear a word against it. Rodney does not live in my world. My world's very different than that.
So Claire, one of the examples of conventional medicine that I know you have experience of is null point surgery. How did that go for you?
Ooh, for me, badly. It didn't work. My null point just returned almost immediately. I'm not sure that it made any difference at all, actually, but certainly within a month or two it was back. And then a couple of years later, my parents agreed to have it again, and the same thing happened. It just went back. I found the operation very painful, very distressing. Not just the operation, but the treatment after it. And I think it left me quite traumatized, actually. I think it left a lot of shock in my system because it was such a bad experience. I'm saying it because I think it's important for people to know that. But of course, it was a long time ago. You know, it was back in the 60s when I had my operation. Things have probably changed a lot since then. I think they've certainly had with things like pain relief after surgery is much better now. And I know that some people have had a good experience of it. But I think it's one of those things, you know, if it helps, it's brilliant. And isn't that amazing, you know, not to have the head posture anymore, to look more kind of unremarkable in the way you do things and not to have the risk of neck pain. You know, I can really see the attractions of having the surgery. But to me, it seems that there isn't really any guarantee it's going to help. And I believe that even if it helps for a while, it's possible that after a few years, you might get the head posture back again. And I think really, this is just purely my opinion, and I know that not everyone agrees with me, but in my opinion, I think childhood is not really the time when you need it, you know, because your neck and everything are much more flexible. You're much more able to get into strange positions without it having too much effect. So I think if it was me, I would consider whether I wanted it maybe in my 20s, you know, when I could make the decision myself, rather than my poor parents having to, because it's such a hard decision, isn't it, for parents to make? You know, of course they want to do anything for their child, don't they? And that's really what happened with mine. You know, they probably just thought there wasn't anything else that could be done, so they'd go with the surgery. The doctor had recommended it, but for me, it was a really bad thing. You know, and it kind of set the tone for things going wrong with conventional medicine for me for the rest of my life, I think. So my next port of call, or not really my next port of call, but since my 20s, I started looking into alternative treatments, you know, with the feeling that you know, they'll be all right, they won't do you any harm. Yes. That was not correct. They can do you harm. Yeah. Oh, isn't this hilarious? I had a rather similar problem with some massage practitioners, osteopaths and so on, of just working in a way that was perfectly professional, but it was just too much for my particular system. And if I could just read a wee bit about that. There were plenty of osteopaths and chiropractors and so on to choose from in London, and I cast my net wide. But as with doctors, the actual appointments didn't vary that much. The practitioner would take a history, which was rather a lengthy business, involving some bemusement about my eye condition. You mean they don't know what caused it? When the examination started, they would poke a cautious finger into my neck. Good God, what on earth have you been doing? And apply some form of massage at some level between uncomfortable and excruciating. Occasionally, they did that thing where they tie you up with your own arms and punch you in the ribs until something gives. After about half an hour, they would step back and I would find that I could move freely. I would leap off the couch, babble my thanks, write a cheque and set off home, swinging my arms or rotating my neck or whatever I'd been unable to do previously. And by the end of the day, I would be in agony again and either make a follow-up appointment or go back to the directory. So this, unfortunately, was repeated quite a lot. I also tried things which weren't really treatments, like Alexander technique and yoga and Pilates. And I had the same kind of problem even with them, that I would just overdo it in some way. Part of my story is about finding the people who could understand my system and actually help me. And I did, actually. I found an absolutely wonderful osteopath in London called Elaine, who works craniosacrally, who just immediately tuned into what was going on for me and was able to help me, which is an amazing experience after all that. I found a wonderful yoga teacher also in London called Drew, who was very aware of my alignment and of what the long-term effects of having my head posture had been, and was able to give me very gentle exercises to do. And I had bad experiences of both yoga and, bad experiences of almost everything, to be honest, including an Alexander technique teacher who dropped a mirror on me, but that's another story.
My goodness.
But I find it, and I think part of what I'm trying to say is, in the book, is I did find things, but it took a very long time, very long time.
And you've certainly given it a good go. You've certainly done lots of research into trying to find both conventional and alternative remedies that could
really,
help you.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
So what really has helped you the most, do you think, Claire?
Well, I think I've just named them actually. Elaine helped me, that particular yoga teacher helped me. It's helped me, well, I trained as a body psychotherapist, as you mentioned.
Yes.
That helped me a lot because one of the things it does is look at the kind of energetic systems in your body and at trauma, actually, because I think part of my problem is actually trauma from the operations that I had when I was younger. And it was very helpful with helping me to release some of that. So that was good. Another thing that helped me was the nystagmus network, actually.
Oh, right.
And I think that rather ties in with the reason I wrote the book, because it was just so helpful being with other people with nystagmus. And if, I might just read last reading, if that's okay.
Oh, yes, please do.
So I went along for a committee meeting where I met you, actually, and your lovely little 4-year-old Hannah, and several other people who are still involved in the network in some various ways. And anyway, and it was lovely to feel normal. I joined the committee, and when at the first meeting I attended, everyone picked up their agenda. I was astonished to see them position the paper right in front of their eyes. How weird, but of course that was what I did. Once, our usual venue being unavailable, a meeting was held in somebody's flat in the Barbican, and there was only minimal sympathetic comment when one of the members totally failed to find the place and had to go home after an hour of searching. This was before mobile phones, of course. It was just one of those things. NN was entirely run by volunteers when I first joined, but a few years later, funding was found for a part-time employee, and I had the honour of being the first to hold that role. I was first in line then, picking up the phone to potential members, some of them shell-shocked parents of recently diagnosed babies. Some had been given misleading information by the hospital and expected terrible things. Others had no information at all. They'd ask, will she go to school like normal children? Will he be able to work? Will she drive a car? And I'd say yes to the going to school, almost certainly yes to the work, and probably not to the driving, but a few people with nystagmus can drive. The relief of just speaking to a normal sounding, reasonably cheerful adult with a condition like their child's brought many of the parents to tears. Some desperate callers fired personal questions which I never resented, but found harder to answer. Did you do okay at school? Yeah, I did pretty well. Have you got a degree? Yes. What degree? French and philosophy. I mean, what class? Oh, a 2-2, sorry about that. Do you read for pleasure? My husband and I love reading. Yeah, I love reading. Most of us do it, NN. Oh, good. Are you married? No. Are you not married because you have nystagmus? Well, tricky one to answer that. And I guess it raises the question. I am married now, by the way, if that person's listening. I think it raises the whole question of how much effect it has on one's life to have a long-term condition like this, which some of us have had since birth, and it's not going to go away. And most likely, unless something very radical happens in medicine, it's not going to change all that much. How much does it affect you? It's a really interesting question.
Yes, absolutely. It's the whole quality of life thing, isn't it? It's quite funny because a few years later, I'm answering this very same questions that you were answering back then. Although no one's ever asked me if I'm married, but then I don't have nystagmus.
Do they ask you if Hannah's married?
No, nobody's ever asked that either. And I can reveal that she is now engaged to be married.
Oh, congratulations, Hannah. That's lovely. Lovely. But I do think it's a really interesting question, and it's another thing I kind of play with that idea in the book of if there could be a controlled experiment where, you know, there's a Claire Entwistle who doesn't have nystagmus but is born into the same family, and
yes,
you know, and if there was a Claire Entwistle who'd had the null point surgery or hadn't, you know, did it really affect me that badly? Or because I don't know that it affected me that badly. You know, it's possible that all the kind of shocky things that were in my system might have been there anyway for some other reason. You know, how much does it affect you? Really interesting question. I mean, I can identify it in very practical ways. I lived in London for most of my life, quite largely because there's good public transport, so you don't have to drive. And I live in Cumbria now, actually. I just moved a few years ago, but I think that would have been a choice I wouldn't have made. I would rather be in the country really than in the city. But the not driving thing is quite a big one in that way. I think I would have got into music quicker if I had been able to manage reading music. You know, those little dots just jump about too much. And actually I discovered one of the things I talk about in the book actually is what a pleasure it's been to learn singing, choral singing. And in fact, one of the people who really helped me was, of all things, an Argentinian tango expert who also taught singing and voice work. And he just worked with me in the most amazing way, in a way that brought a lot of alignment and confidence and balance into my system, because you need all those things for singing, you know, which is why he'd understood them so well, come to understand them so well. So, you know, that was a bit of a swings and roundabouts thing. If I'd learned to read music, I might have got into, you know, music and singing in a more conventional way, but I probably wouldn't have had that amazing experience of meeting him. So, you know, some of it's bad and some of it's good, really hard to tell.
So a very full and eventful life to date, I would say. And now, of course, you're a published author.
Sorry.
Now you're a published author.
Well, yeah, I published one book and a chapter in a book that nobody ever seems to read.
Do you have plans for a further book?
Yes, I'm working on something now, which it's kind of centres around this rather middle-aged move to Cumbria, which Steve and I have made. You know, how we decided to do it, and what it's like now that we get here, and was it like what we imagined. And that those questions are kind of leading into much bigger, very current questions about things like how we make decisions about climate change or managing COVID. So it's a kind of, it's very much a work in progress at the moment, but I'm working on that.
Yes, the last few months have been a big time of reflection for a lot of us, haven't they?
Haven't they just? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, they really have. It really have. It's affected my work because body psychotherapy, it's partly a talking therapy and partly uses touch. And of course, the amount of even just getting clients here was off the cards for a while. And it's very, very limited now, and very limited what you can do with them. So that's really sad. But, you know, a lot of people have suffered enormously from their jobs just disappearing, haven't they? So yes. I guess mine hasn't completely disappeared, but yeah, it's quite a time at the moment, isn't it? Lots of people thinking in lots of new ways.
And we look forward to the new normal and having a real face-to-face open day, another event.
Wouldn't that be great? Yes, I do hope that happens next year. I know you're planning it. I really hope it happens and we can all get together again. It's not really the same. I mean, it's lovely having these things, but it's not the same, is it?
No, it's not quite the same. So for adults listening to this, or parents of young children, what would be your one message that you'd like them to take from your book?
I think I'd say be curious in what's going on for yourself. Mm-hmm. Be really interested, you know, as if you were a sympathetic person, you know, who cares about you yourself, which of course most parents are for their children, but as people go older, they have to manage themselves. I'd say carry on being really kind. Notice what helps you. Notice what stresses you out and makes your nystagmus work. Take a lot of breaks. You know, take it really seriously that you need breaks. Mm. If you're doing something really difficult, like staring at a computer for hours, and just notice what makes you feel better. Try all these things. You know, if you're getting loads of persistent headaches or neck pain or something, go on an adventure to find something that will help you. I think for most people, relaxing is really helpful. Just, you know, lying on the ground, nicely aligned, maybe with a block onto your head, maybe with your feet on the floor so that you're sort of semi-supine, and just relax. It's free. It only takes a few minutes, and it can make an enormous difference. So I think pursuing things like that really important.
Yeah, and be kind to yourself, which I know you practice too, and we all deserve a bit of that, don't we?
We really do. Everybody, whether they've got nystagmus or irritable bowel syndrome or anything else.
Yes.
Just that, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Claire. I'm conscious that I mustn't keep you too long because I know it's very tiring staring at a screen, but it's been so lovely to catch up with you today for me personally, and I'm sure our listeners will have lots of interest in what you've had to say, and I hope they'll enjoy reading your book too.
Thank you, Sue. It's been lovely talking to you as well. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everyone who's watching this far.